Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Hamamoto. Oh, I'm jinxed today. It's my birthday. It's February 18th, year 2024, and it's 4 o'clock, 4:26 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And if you're still here, I'm doing the live stream. Apparently, Nikosmos, is that right? Uh, Finally, well, I appreciate your patience. There was a problem with the hookup of the microphone, as you noted here. I was so focused on the introduction to this particular book here. I'll start from the top, that I neglected to look into the chat room, right? I'll be more vigilant next time. I didn't get to look at the chat room until I ran the first clip, which I believe did have the sound to it. So let me take it from the top. The second version is always the better anyway. Because I don't rehearse these talks at all. So this, as you probably saw in the visuals, is the autobiography, not comprehensive, but a recent update of the fascinating career of Dr. Cyril Wecht. And today I would like to pay tribute to him. I have some clips, and it's going to take me some time to reload them because they're out of sequence here. But to pay tribute to a gentleman who, for all his professional life, all his training, all the consultations, and this is a individual who's done over 15,000 autopsies. He's supervised them. He's done thousands of consultancies, right? And I can go on, and I did in the first part of this program. So I don't want to shortchange him on that. I mean, but he's good enough on his own and sing his own praises. So we've already wasted a lot of time, or at least I have, from this technical problem that I've had. But I will promise you that your patience will be rewarded, because I will conclude with one of the, I believe, blind spots, and we all have them, including myself. One of the blind spots that he has that we can all benefit from, the future Cyril Wechts, or of the forensic area, medical law, whatever field it is. We can learn by this accretion of knowledge and experience that we have been blessed with, thanks to Dr. Cyril Wecht. And I'm alluding to the concluding section of this talk. I hope I can kind of keep track of some of the time here. The concluding sections, which will deal with the JonBenet Ramsay case. Most of you still remember it. And it's fresh because at least some people are arguing, as we'll see at the end, the system that has yielded these types of crimes is still very much in place, right? And this is the one, I think it's because he's such a humanist and needs to believe that there's some shred of decency in our social world and our political system that will allow us redemption of some sort, or belief, not redemption necessarily, but belief in the way the world operates, right? But I feel that we have to look at it a little bit more in a jaundiced fashion. And ironically, he's one of the key figures who has done the most to advance this type of understanding. But I want to push it a little bit further. I'm speaking cryptically, and I'm going from memory here, but in a interview that he did in preparing for this talk here, he did a workup on the JonBenet Ramsay case, which he was brought in to consult on by the market tabloid. It's called The Globe. And I read those, by the way, often. I started out in the National Enquirer, which my mother used to buy every week when she went to the grocery store, probably to reward herself. But that stuck with me. And the tabloids do not dismiss them. They're very, very important in this type of work. But anyway, the Globe approached him to take a second look at the Ramsay case, and he concluded that She was involved. It's hypothetical, but his hypothesis is that John Benet Ramsay was a victim of sex play involving either one or both of his parents, and that she died accidentally in the course of this sex play. And all the different scenarios that were set up after the so-called kidnapping and ransoming, and the story went on and on. And I'm not going to revisit it at this point. However, in preparing for this talk, that's why these topics are never old. I came across a very important video, and I'll show a good part of it here at the end of this cast, that says this is a part of a larger, call it mind control system, through which the American, maybe the world population is being used through these types of traumatization events. And I'll explain more as we get on. But since we missed my introduction to Dr. Wecht, I think it's incumbent upon me to give him his due credit to show his involvement with, I think he was one of the co-founders of what's called COPA, the Committee on Presidential Assassinations. And he's getting his kudos here in this clip that I'm gonna be finding. Hang on a second here. I have to restart the event here.
And John has really done a yeoman-like job in holding us together as a sturdy band. So I think and I want to add my thanks to all of the volunteers, and especially Marilyn, for all the work that she's done in putting this together. I want to add one more special note of thanks with regard to the programming that took place today, and the fact that COPA was able to work out something, not exactly what they wanted, but a presence nevertheless, albeit somewhat delayed. And that came about essentially through the ongoing continuous efforts, I might mention on a pro bono basis, of a very fine attorney and a long supporter and fellow critic researcher of all of us, Brad Kazaya, who's here. Brad, thank you. Now, this is a different crowd. I don't know how many talks I've given in the last 3-4 weeks. I haven't kept track. A whole bunch of universities.
You can see that he's a man of incredible organizational talents, and in addition to an incredible intellect. Now, so far as the presidential assassination concern we're talking about the Kennedy assassination. He falls very much in line with what the majority of American people believe, and that is that the assassination was the product of a conspiracy. Now, in this book here, he does not really name any names. He does not implicate J. Edgar Hoover or other people for planning it, but certainly he involves them in the cover-ups. He certainly alludes to the fact that the vice president, Lyndon Baines Johnson, was perfectly capable of being involved in such a plot. But most of us are very well acquainted with the details of the case, so we won't have to belabor that point. But you want to talk about OGs, that would be Dr. Cyril Wecht. It's not the pop-up pundits who we see more and more about coming up with these supposedly new discoveries. Supposedly the doctor's a Sabbatean. I think you have to be Jewish, don't you, to be a Sabbatean? And I thought most ass clowns don't watch me anyway, but apparently I'm wrong. Isn't Jordan Bay some sort of pseudonym for some self-professed anarchist? I'm not really sure. Or is it Hakeem Bey? I can't remember. But anyway, I accept your 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 birthday wishes, and that of I saw Kathy Sue here. I've been trying to get in touch with Kathy Sue and in preparing for another talk. So please send me a message, Kathy, so we can communicate. Anyway, let me take a look in the archive to share with you some other information that we came across.
I understand, told me from the age.
Okay, we saw that one. I'm sorry, I have to go scroll through these and reboot them because I lost my queue when I had to restart this here. So let's go to, I know I didn't go through this yet, but
week he was
let's go through Dr. Thomas Noguchi because before I was rudely non-interrupted, I talked about how Cyril Wecht is second only to Thomas Noguchi as a forensic pathologist is concerned, so far as the high-profile cases that he's operated. And he gives due credit to his friend and colleague, Dr. Thomas Noguchi, who has passed on. And as I was blabbing away with my microphone not connected properly, it was connected, but it was not hooked up correctly. As I was going on, I said that Thomas Noguchi is actually the celebrity coroner to the stars. That's according to the popular press. He's much more serious than that. Not Cyril Wecht. And to Cyril Wecht's credit, he does point to Dr. Noguchi, at least alludes to him as being important. Now, in the 70s, there was a show called Quincy Medical Examiner, and it was about the chief coroner of the county of Los Angeles, California, and it was starring Jack Klugman. And his assistant was Asian American, Japanese American. The real story was there was a Japanese American in charge named Thomas Noguchi. And that caught my attention because as a child of that generation, there were very few of us who had any positions of power or distinction, right? It's still largely true. That's why I have 12,000 subscribers and someone like, I won't name them. You know them. They style themselves as the progenitors of the intellectual dark web. Ooh, right. That's only recently did I know they had a movement attached to them, but they're all synthetic, right? They're all synthetic. I'll name them. Brett Weinstein, Eric Weinstein, their daddy, who's an prominent attorney in L.A. And he's reinvented himself, or his handlers have put him out there because this type of programming here has become enormously popular. Right, so I'm not going to play Sam Nakamoto to Jack Klugman in Quincy Medical Examiner to these clowns, the Weinstein brothers, not Harvey, but Brett and Eric Weinstein. By the way, I was on a smaller vidcast with a couple of younger, very serious investigators, and they wanted to put us together on one show, me and Brett Weinstein, who is the new Jordan Peterson. Are you still with me there? Yeah, you might be getting some buffering, right? He's the new, being positioned as the new Jordan Peterson. But anyway, the show never came off because the guys that ran the program said they got a message from, and I think they sent me a copy of it. I'll see if I can find it in my email, from Brett Weinstein saying that he wouldn't be on a show with someone who had been on the Alex Jones show. That's me. I was the first academic to be on an Alex Jones show and to really on a national scale to bring these types of issues into a public forum, right? But again, like in the show Quincy, I'm the second banana, at least in their minds, right? In my own mind, I'm a legend. And I do have the credentials for it. since it's my birthday, I spent 21 years at the University of California, Davis, not at no Portland State University, and walking out because it was whites, no campus whites, right? And then he became a big celebrity out of that. So anyway, this is why stories like this are meaningful to me on different levels. So let's talk about Thomas Noguchi. Let's take a look at him here.
was pronounced dead at 1:44 a.m. on June 6th. The autopsy was conducted by Los Angeles County Chief Medical Examiner Thomas Noguchi. In his lengthy career, Noguchi would perform autopsies on celebrities including Marilyn Monroe, Sharon Tate, and Janis Joplin, among others. According to the New York Times, Noguchi was also sometimes criticized for his dishy comments about celebrities to the media, and while Kennedy was in the hospital, he reportedly danced with joy, according to UPI, saying, "I'm going to be famous. I hope he dies." That said, the Journal of Neurosurgery notes that Noguchi's autopsy of Kennedy has a stellar reputation. It's been dubbed, in fact, the perfect autopsy. The autopsy revealed that 3 bullets wounded the senator, the first at 1:44 a.m. on June 6th. The autopsy.
Okay, that's an excerpt from some, I think, ABC affiliate propaganda trying to discredit the scenario surrounding the assassination of Robert Kennedy. And he doesn't go so far as to defame Noguchi. His autopsy is cited more than once in this particular book by his friend and colleague, Cyril Wecht. And just to let you know some of the couple of at least the details, Dr. Wecht agrees with Noguchi. He saw the evidence himself. He reviewed it in subsequently in, I guess, in one of his books, all of which I've read, by the way, going back over 20 years at least, maybe longer. But Robert Kennedy was shot behind the right ear, probably from a distance of only 1 or 2 inches, right? And I won't go again through the whole forensic information. It's pretty much been done to death by now. But he covers this case in a very thorough fashion, but updating it so far as political assassinations that might be looming around the corner for all we know. And again, that's another reason why his contributions over the years are important, because as I was arguing before I was non-interrupted, I interrupted myself for a change when I was in the sound out there. I think this type of work, and even my humble efforts, helps to stay the hand of the dark forces that used to get away with this type of activity a lot more easily. And ironically, it's even some of their own tools of surveillance, such as the omnipresent cell phones, mobile phones, that make it more difficult for them to carry out these types of programs, these types of operations. Now, that might mean that it only causes them to be more clever about how to get over on certain candidates, whether it's in politics, corporate types. We know in retrospect that there was something called Operation Phoenix, or the Phoenix program. Douglas Valentine wrote an incredible book that I read I think when it came out, long time ago, because I taught Asian American studies, and I taught the Vietnam War. I taught about the Korean War. I taught about all the wars in America that have been waged against yellow and brown people around the world. And I say brown people because I'm going to be talking about a book called Tango Wars pretty soon, and that's about the war that's been by the U.S. engaged against Latin American countries, but certainly Asia has been the focus there. So let me also, in doing this overview, bring in a person who came to mind so far as the radio, the more open pre-Clear Channel. And I understand George Soros is buying, I think, the second largest radio chain in America. That's alarming. But there was a certain window, I think it was called underground radio, before it became corporate, and the potential was undermined, just like Rolling Stone, right? The potential was incredible when it first started. And I gave a talk on Jan Wenner a couple of weeks ago, and I had problems with that one too because of copyright issues. But today, the Rolling Stone that we read is a globalist rag. It's a UN/NATO rag before, and I'm not sure anymore. But before it seemed to be like a genuine, real, organic, community-based newspaper that started in San Francisco by Jan Wenner, right? So let's take a look at an example of Dr. Noguchi talking about the murder of Marilyn Monroe. All right. I'm going to have to cue this up, so bear with me in a moment. But the second point I'm making here is to look at the outstanding work of the broadcaster Elliot Mintz. Okay, I'm doing this because I wanted to tell the public that before he became the professional spokesperson of Yoko Ono, I don't know what his official job title is, but he's been close to her for quite a long time, and I think he became official at a certain point. There should be a book about Elliot Mintz, or hopefully he'll write his own book at some point, but he's a very important character. So anyway, this is how he intersects with Noguchi, and this is how Noguchi intersects with Dr. Wecht, and this is how Dr. Wecht intersects with our living history. So give me a moment. I'm going into the archive. Yes, here we go. This is Elliot Mintz. This comes from his archives. You can see the quality of people he was able to interview over the years. He was excellent. I think he was one of the top personalities.
You're aware that there is a great deal of talk and renewed rumors going on now that Marilyn Monroe's death was not a suicide after all. Have you been familiar with that discussion?
Yes, I happen to personally liked Marilyn Monroe.
Me too.
But I wish that I didn't have to examine her, but as I was assigned, I was a deputy coroner, and then my predecessor did assign. I did not have a choice. That is that I don't think Marilyn Monroe and many people's mind is still living, and there is a constant reevaluation of as to how she had died. What was she thinking until the second before death is the one that we are concerned. Based on that, I think it is unfair for all of us to stubbornly stick with the feeling that is that once we have determined we're not going to change our mind.
Okay, you get an idea why Dr. Noguchi was a character was not based on him. His English was excellent, but he spoke with a very, very thick Japanese accent. Nonetheless, I don't know if you picked it up, but he says the evidence that he personally inspected indicates that the very last person that Marilyn Monroe spoke with on the telephone, she called him, which means she had his number. And you probably know how he got her number, or she got his number. We don't have to go through that story again. But the point is that he was the last person to talk to, because they were being surveilled, right? So he got that information. And again, it was an excellent job. No one really could dispute the fact that Dr. Noguchi was a top-notch forensic pathologist. However, he was eventually thrown out of office because he had a tendency, like Dr. Wecht, to speak truth to power. He said, this is medical science, right? Sure, he has human feelings about the characters, the personalities, the individuals, the the family members who he had to examine their remains in a public forum. He tried to remain sensitive to that. But even then, and that's a story in itself, Dr. Noguchi was swept off the stage there. Okay, and another blast from the past, since we're going on with our tribute to Dr. Wecht, despite the shaky start. We're going to have another exercise in nostalgia from a person that you will, if you're from that era, you'll recognize immediately. So I won't spoil your fun when you see him. And I promise I won't show too much of the video, but this is mostly for fun. Please give me a moment. Okay, hang on. It's coming. It's coming. Oh, where are you?
Was assassinated in November of 1963, a long time ago. But Pittsburgh's Cyril Wecht says the investigation into the assassination is far from over.
Wecht has been outspoken with his opinions for quite some time, and he tells our legal editor, Julie Grant, that more information will be coming out soon.
On November 22, 1963, in Dallas, Texas, President John F. Kennedy was murdered in broad daylight. The Warren Commission concluded.
Dr. Cyril Wecht, who's a certified forensic pathologist. He's the
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is the clip I was looking for. It's a much younger Dr. Cyril Wecht, but what I was trying to find was Geraldo Rivera, and I'm giving it a fake Spanish accent because his real name, we're talking about corporate media here. His real name is Gerald Rivers. Gerald Rivers. Geraldo Rivera was a Jewish kid who adopted a Latino persona. All right, but anyway, here's Geraldo. I promise you I won't inflict too much pain. I thought it might be good for a good laugh.
The city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. In addition to that, he's also a professor of law and pathology. He's formerly the president of the American College of Legal Medicine, and he's now the director of the Institute of Forensic Scientists. He's one of a handful of physicists, or physicians, I should say, who've actually seen the autopsy photographs and x-rays of the late president. Welcome, Dr. Wecht. Now,
thank you.
Before I get into the questioning, I want to make one thing clear before we go on. It's the question of the single bullet theory. Briefly, to summarize, if the president and Governor Conley were wounded by two separate bullets, that leads to the conclusion that there were two assassins because of the difficulty in operating that rifle. If in fact they were hit by the same bullet, by a single bullet, that leads great weight to the Warren Commission's finding that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone.
Here now, forensic pathologist Dr.
All right, that's enough of Geraldo. One of the lesser-known cases that Cyril Wecht, Dr. Cyril Wecht had consulted on is Brittany Murphy. And I won't show you the clip there, but he concludes, because not all of his observations and his assessments are controversial. Some of them are quite predictable, and many of them, if not most of them, are very much in agreement with the official reports. But one of the people was Brittany Murphy. Now, I think there's more to the story of her suicide, or he says it's probably more of a drug intoxication. It might have been accidental suicide. And she was a promising actress who never really got to display her talents. Brittany Murphy, by the way, she was Italian-American. So we have all these identities switches here. But she was one of them. He's also weighed in on the Kurt Cobain show. not Kurt Cobain's show, but Kurt Cobain, the lead singer of Nirvana. I said show because was preparing for this particular talk, and I came across a couple guys that call themselves the drinking buddies, and for them, this type of work is entertainment, right? They managed to bring in Cyril Wecht on, I guess he'll go on anybody's show, that, which is fine. That's his prerogative. And I guess they're semi-serious, but the only reason I'm not showing it is I don't want to promote these true crime so-called pop-up pundits that have just completely sucked the oxygen out of the type of work that I'm trying to accomplish. I'm not the only one either. There's other individuals who you know quite well who have been put to the back burner because they're doing the real work while the biters are taking the credit for it. All right, so let's see here.
Dr. Wecht, thanks for being with us.
Good morning, Jamie.
That heart-shaped adhesive that was left behind is significant because heart-shaped stickers were found on other pieces of the duct tape and in the Casey Anthony home. But have you heard any evidence so far by the prosecution that directly links the death of Caylee Anthony to Casey Anthony?
Well, if you take any specific piece in and of itself, I guess the answer is no. But when you put everything together collectively and correlate it with the background that has been portrayed by the defendant herself through her attorneys, then I think you have an overwhelming case.
What's the best scientific evidence they
Yeah, one of the lesser known cases that Dr. Wecht was involved with, I neglected, and I'm going back through my notes here, I neglected to mention that Dr. Wecht was also the primary consultant for the great, well, some people would dispute this characterization, but the film JFK, directed by Oliver Stone, he was the chief consultant for that, and very much supports the conclusions of the. Well, not conclusions, but they're more like dramatizations of the film in agreement with the rest of the American public. Also, before I run out of time, because I want to get to the John Benet Ramsay case, Dr. Wecht was involved, I guess, as a consultant with the Elvis Presley death. And he ruled that an accidental death as well. This is way back in 1977. He claims that there was medical malpractice that was involved, but there was no sinister plot behind the death of Elvis Presley, and indeed, Elvis is dead. Another case that Dr. Wecht was involved with, this goes back to 1970. This is how long he's been involved with it. Involves the murder of the family of a medical doctor named Jeffrey McDonald. And it was later written up in a book with the collaboration of Dr. McDonald himself. I think it's Joe McGinnis is the author. And it's a story about how supposedly these Manson family type characters broke into his home and killed his wife and two children. He was tried and convicted. I'm talking about Dr. McDonald for it, and later he sued the author for I don't know, misrepresenting himself as a disinterested party, because the story that came out by McGinnis, I can't remember the title of the book. I read it when it came out. I mean, that's how long I've been at this. But anyway, I think McDonald is still in prison. I think he's still alive, if I'm not mistaken. But that's certainly a case that's not going to ever really go away. All right. I also mentioned that Dr. Wecht was involved with consulting on the killing of John Benet Ramsay. I neglected to mention that he published a book on that topic. It's called Who Killed John Benet Ramsay? And I think there's more than 2 or 3 editions out. The most recent one, I don't think I have this one. It's a 2016 illustrated edition, but I got the one that was done by Dr. Wecht years earlier. And again, I'll restate that Dr. Wecht claims that the death of JonBenet Ramsay, she was 6 years old. You know the backstory, I'm sure. She was a beauty queen. She was put in all these pageants by her mother, in particular, Patsy Ramsay, who subsequently died of cancer, and who possibly was implicated in the death of JonBenet Ramsay, her daughter. They also had an older son. But anyway, Wecht claims that this is her death was probably due to accidental asphyxiation during sex play. She had some kind of ligature with their father, John Ramsay. This is not me saying this. This is Cyril Wecht himself saying this on a video that I watched in preparation for this program. I'll leave it up to you. You can put in the comment whether you agree with that scenario. You might have your own theory. I would probably prefer Dr. Wecht's theory over yours, since he's done the hard work in researching the question. But again, here's where I think he falls short, and this is no knock on Dr. Wecht, but it only points up the fact that this type of research really doesn't end, and shouldn't end, because I will start wrapping it up here once I find the video. I'll start wrapping it up with this very interesting. I'll post this on my Patreon in its totality. It's too long for this purpose here, but I'll post it on the Patreon in its totality. And whether or not that you want to believe in the hypotheses, that's up to you as a thinking person. And so let's get into that. Let me see if I can find it here. Here we go.
The random murder of a 6-year-old child snatched from her bed in her own home possibly have to do with national security? A May 2016 article written by Timothy Charles Holmseth asked this question, which I believe cracks open the entire case, which has had the American public fascinated, horrified, and perplexed since the 1990s. Holmseth makes the connection to Kathy O'Brien, who claims to have information on the JonBenet Ramsay case. Kathy's claims seem to be a skeleton key that opened many doors for me in researching this particular matter. Kathy O'Brien is a recovered and vocal survivor of the CIA's MKUltra Project Monarch mind control operation. Born in Michigan in 1957, Kathy was born into a family of generational pedophilia. She was sexually abused by her father from infancy. Kathy's father, Earl O'Brien, had a 6th grade education and earned his money as a worm digger. He supplemented his meager income through sales of pornography, images of Kathy and her siblings being abused. He was selling these images through the U.S. mail until one day he was caught by the U.S. government. Lucky for Earl, though, a local politician approached him with a proposition.
There's one particular politician that was involved, and that was just a local politician at that time. And he approached my father and told him he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would agree to sell me into MKUltra mind control. Because any child who had been and used in child so horrifically prior to age 5.
Okay, you can see the necessity why this has to go on a different platform than on YouTube. I'll be lucky if this video is not taken down on the basis of that clip in particular. For the national security establishment of the president, I think the JFK, the RFK assassination, this is ancient history to them, and they'll allow any number of people to keep researching that from now and forevermore. But that does not mean that this larger underlying system that that's in very much in place in 2024. That doesn't mean that it has liberated us from events like this of the future. Okay, I will conclude here. And again, I apologize for the truncated nature of today's cast, but I would conclude with saying that there has been a price taken on the finances of Dr. Wecht for being so outspoken very early on in his career. And this was news to me. I learned a lot of incidental, important information. But early on in his career, it didn't seem like the medical coroner's office of the county of Allegheny, this is in Pittsburgh, or Pittsburgh is in Allegheny County, I believe. This is in Pennsylvania, but he was appalled by the almost zero degree of professionalism that was involved, including people who had zero background. It was an elective office, but people who had a zero background in any sort of medical training and doing this. And that's where he established his career early on. But in doing so, he offended local politicians by saying that you can get away with murder in Allegheny County. I'm sure that's not something that the city bosses, the local bosses want to hear, right? And then eventually he got the attention of the federal government, who prosecuted him. I can't remember the exact dates on that, but he was exonerated. They decided not to try the case. I guess it was sufficient for them to have exacted about $4 million worth of his own money that he had to use in order to clear his name. And he even voluntarily stepped down from that office in Allegheny County and was able to make his living elsewhere. So he did pay the price. He's still at it. I hope to see him weighing in on the next breaking case. We can be guaranteed that there'll be something new on the horizon. So that's Dr. Cyril Wecht. Let me see if there's any comments here. You're welcome. Any comments? Oh, happy birthday. Yeah, thank you very much. If I blow out the candles, I might burn myself. There are going to be so many of them with my luck today. Let's see here. Oh, you love me down in Australia. Thank you very much. I'll try to do a better job of it next time. I'll be much better prepared. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate your support here. And as promised, I'll be putting some of the other material that I didn't get to here, because I don't want to hold you past 5 o'clock today. I'll be posting this on my Patreon. So I wish you a very good evening and a wonderful Monday. Again, thank you very much for spending the time with you today. I'll see you next week, God willing. Bye.